Welcome to the General Fund Budget and Tax Levy for 2023. So first of all, let's go into the 2023 tax levy information. So the budget process begins with a zero-based budget, and then the finance department will build this budget based on the following. So like personnel budget is developed based on each individual staff pay as well as the benefits provided and the cost to provide those benefits. The Personnel Committee will also review this. Professional services are developed based on the professional service contracts that are in place, example, audits, legal, planning, and engineering, and other consultants. The operation budget is based on all other costs associated with operating the city and providing the services. Transfers to other funds is based on the CIP plan. So once the budget has been completed and the impact on the levy has been determined and then sent to each department will meet with the finance and the city administrator to review and determine if any changes are needed. The finance, along with the city administrator, will meet with the finance committee before the proposed budget is considered during budget workshops. During the budget workshop, the full council can make any recommendation to the preliminary budget prior to setting the preliminary budget in September. The council can continue to make recommendations on the preliminary budget prior to the final adoption in September. So, like I said, after we determine the existing costs for the year and taking into consideration all anticipated non-budget tax revenues, there's always a substantial amount of money needed to balance the budget, and this is raised through the property tax. In 23, the anticipated property tax levy, including the debt levy, the property tax abatement levies, and the economic development levy, is $5.3 million, with the general fund budget setting at just a little over $6.2. So remember, it's the county assessor who determines the market value, and this is what each property would be worth on the open market. And this is done the year before taxes are even payable. So then each parcel is assigned a class rate based on the use of the property, which is determined by legislation. State also dictates that all market values must be within 90 and 105% of the actual sales. So the information used to determine the market value for the 23 property taxes would have been the new constructions, improvements to existing properties, and sales for the properties from October 2020 to September 30th of 21. For 23, property values across the state as well as the nation have increased substantially. For Sherburne County, the total valuation of all properties increased about 22%. For the city, the net tax capacity, which is the taxable market value of all properties, increased by about 28%, with 3% new construction. So how are taxes calculated? So to determine the parcel's tax capacity, the parcel's market value is multiplied by the class rate. So as stated earlier, like homesteaded, a residential is a 1% class rate. So this taxable value then, less the homestead exclusion, would be times the 1%. So this parcel's tax capacity is 2,698.13. The tax capacity of a parcel is what dictates the amount of taxes that will be applied to that parcel based on the needs of the government entities, so such as the city, the school, and the county. So the city's taxable market value, which is the estimated market value of all properties within the city limits, have increased 123% since 2015. For 23, the city's market value increased approximately 31% over 2022. When taxable market values increase, then the city's tax capacity also increased. And this does have a direct impact on the city's tax rate. So just a reminder, it's the county assessor who determines the market value for each parcel. And again, remember, this would have been determined by January 2nd of 22. In addition, each parcel is assigned that class rate based on the use. Legislation can change this classification system, and that can shift the tax burden from one type of property to another. So currently in the city, most that we have is residential, which is at 1%, commercial is at 2%. The city's net tax capacity, which is used to calculate the city's tax rate. As taxable market values increase, the net tax capacity increase. Again, for 23, the tax capacity has increased by 28%, which is 3% in new construction. Since 2015, the net tax capacity has increased about 107%. With new growth, that helps lower the tax burden to existing properties. The components of the tax levy are as follow and very similar year over year. So the general levy, which is about 4.1, shows an increase of $479,000 and represents 77% of the total levy. This levy is the revenues needed to balance the general fund budget. Remember, the general fund budget are the expenditures associated with providing the services to the community. The property tax abatement levy is at $12,000. This represents the property taxes that are paid by a parcel, and then the city in turn pays the property owners a portion of those taxes back. Currently this year, this represents less than 1% of the total levy. These abatements are for the Looperland and Premier Marine projects. The debt levy is at $1,086,000 and is used to pay the yearly debt payments for the city and represents about 20% of the total levy. Remember, the city, we can't pay off any debt sooner or lower the debt any faster than it's outlined in the bond documents. However, if we do have excess cash, we can use that to make the debt payments in lieu of increasing this debt service. The Big Lake Economic Development Levy are the funds used for promoting economic development within the city, and this represents about 2% of the total levy. So the total levy for the city has increased an average of 3.41% from 2010 to 23. As you can see, the general fund levy, which is this tall blue bar, are the funds used to provide the services to taxpayers. It has increased since 2010. This increase is a reflection of the population increase since about 13% and inflationary increases since 2015. The debt service levy, the green bar, has decreased, which reflects the decrease in the total debt for the city. This is the levy percent change from 2011 through 2023. The levy increase reflects the increase in the levy over the years, which represents the increased costs to provide services, as well as an increase or decrease to debt payments. So remember, local governments, you do not directly set the tax rate, but instead the tax rate is a function of the levy in the local tax base. The tax rate is calculated based on the total levy funds needed to cover city services and then divided by the city's net tax capacity. For 23, even though the total levy increases to $211,000 or 4.2%, the city's tax rate will decrease 9.29 to 39.45. With the preliminary total property value showing an increase about 28%, and with that 3% being new construction, and with the city tax rate of 39.45, if we take an estimated 23% increase of property values, residents would see an increase to the city's portion only of their property taxes anywhere from $1 to $3 per month, or 1 to 4%. Depending on the value of the property. Now, if the property value did not increase, then the city's portion of the property taxes would show a decrease because of the decrease in the city's tax rate. If the city's net tax capacity had not increased by 28%, then there would be about a $3 to $8 increase per month because our city's, as the city's tax rate would increase because the total overall levy of funds needed increased. So looking at a residential property with a value of $338, the estimated city's portion of this property taxes would be approximately $1,308. This is only if this is about $2 more a month. Now, this is only if this property actually increased 23%. So say in last year it was worth $275, now it's worth $338. If the property values again did not increase, there would be a decrease because our city tax rate went down. Remember, the homestead exclusion also goes down as property values go up. Now, I do know that there has been talked at legislation to maybe increase this homestead exclusion phase-out amount due to the increase in values. If we're looking at all jurisdictions, so all government entities, this property owner would see approximately about a $28 per month increase. When reviewing the allocation for the property taxes based on jurisdiction, about 30% is county, 31 city, and 39 school district. And this is pretty consistent year over year. So before we move on to the city budget, let's recap the city's proposed levy. The total levy is proposed at $5,346,485, with the city's tax rate at 39.45. So if you compare our tax rate to other cities in the Sherburne County, we have one of the lowest. The city also has one of the largest increase in tax capacity. But if you look at like Elk River has a lot of commercial and industrial businesses, which are at a higher tax rate. So compared to our 1%. So currently, like the city's market values are comprised of 87% residential and the remaining 13% apartment, commercial, and industrial. As new development occurs, the tax rate will grow and the city's tax rate will continue to go down. And if we get additional commercial and industrial, that means residential burden of paying the taxes would also go down because commercial and industrial pay at a higher percentage. So now let's move on to our budgets. Looking at the 23 balanced general fund budget, which is a little over $6.2 million, this is a 9.99% increase over the 2022 budget. The majority of the increase in revenues are taxes, as the levy is higher. Also, other revenues, we indicate an increase in license and permit, as well as intergovernmental and franchise fees. The majority of increase in expenditures for each department is in personnel. There's also an increase to transfer to other funds. When we review where does the funds come from to support our city, you'll see 64% funds needed to balance the budget are property tax, with 7% from the transfer from the liquor store. This transfer helps lower the overall funds needed to be raised from property taxes in order to balance the budget. It's a great reason why it's important to shop local, as the profits from the liquor store are poured back into the community through this transfer to the general fund and assists in paying for the services provided to the community. When reviewing the preliminary general fund expenditures, you will see 63% of all expenses are allocated to personnel. This is expected considering the main objective of the city is to provide services for those in the city. 25% of the budget is operational costs, 7% reflects the transfers to the CIP fund for future projects, and 3% is for professional services. Personnel for the general fund is showing an increase of 9.62. The majority of the increase is contributed to the overall increase to the city's pay plan, as well as workers' compensation and other insurances increase. Transfers to other funds is showing an increase of $127,000. This increase is contributed to an increase of $100,000 to the Park Maintenance and Improvement CIP fund, as well as an additional increase of $40,000 to the Street Maintenance CIP fund. The 2023 proposed budget also includes increase in utility and inflationary costs for products and services. Reviewing the preliminary expenditures by service, you see that 48% of all expenditures are allocated to public safety. This includes our police, fire, and building department. It's one of the reasons why Big Lake is such a safe and great community. 15% is allocated to our public works, and then 13% is allocated to culture. This includes like our parks department, library, and recreational and community events. These services promote the quality of life in Big Lake. As shown in this chart, the allocation for the 2023 general fund budget is pretty consistent as year over year. Public safety, this large red portion of the PARO chart, is very important to community and is normally around 50% of the total budget. We didn't actually show transfers budgeted as its own separate line item except beginning in 2017. As indicated earlier, the majority of all increases to the city department was contributed to the increase to the city's pay plan and workers' compensation insurance. The general government, which is the mayor, council, planning, election, admin, finance, and IT, has an increase about 3.53 and represents 19.82% of the total budget. As I stated earlier, public safety has an increase of 10% and is about 48% of the total budget. This includes our police, fire, and building division. Streets and parks, or excuse me, streets and highway, they are showing a decrease, and this is because we no longer are doing a $30,000 transfer from the general fund to a CIP as we were in prior years out of these departments. It's now will show up in our admin and finance department. Engineering and streets, again, and fleet, the majority of their increase is due to the increase in the pay plan. Culture and rec has an increase of 25.46%. The majority of this, again, is an increase in the personnel, plus in parks we increased lake and park maintenance. Economic development has an increase of 44.52%. This is because for this year, 23, only 25% of the community development director's wages and fringe will be allocated to the Big Lake Economic Development Authority. Prior years it was 50%, but the 25 is a more direct reflection of the time actually spent between doing city services and BLEDA. Again, going over the main reason for all the increase over the 2022 budget of $571,000, personnel $347,000, and it's the market rate increase to the pay plan, step increases, and an increase to workers' compensation. Operational expense has an increase of $92,000. Again, increased cost in motor fuel, supplies, training, utilities, liability insurance, and then transfers to other funds. We are increasing the transfer to our Park Maintenance and Improvement Fund, the Street Maintenance Fund, and Equipment Replacement Fund. Let's just look at our debt levy, what those funds are used for. So the total debt payments in 2023 for the debt service, so this doesn't include our enterprise fund, just the debt service fund, is $2.2 million, and 48% is collected by the debt levy. For our CIP plan for 23 through 27, the city looks at all the needs, including our enterprise and our debt payment that are due each year, when planning what expenditures will actually be approved for each operating budget. So council truly only approves the current 23s, but they review every year, because what we do this year has a direct impact on next year. And that's true about even our total overall budget. We do truly a 4-year concept plus our current year budget, so that council can see whatever decisions they make this year, how it will impact future year's budget. So again, let's look at our capital improvement plan for the 23 through 27. LGA again will be used for capital improvement. We also have, where our park development fund, we have some huge needs that we wanted to do in 23 and 24, but our park development fund is not fully funded, so that's the reason why in 23 we are increasing the transfer by $100,000 so that we can eventually get the goals done that the city would like to do with their parks. Just a quick look at the local government aid, which is allocated for projects from 23 to 27. We continue to plan for the future in a very conservative method, trying to save a little bit for huge purchases that we know are coming down the road. For 23, the LGA projected to be received is $792,000 and has been allocated for projects and equipment. This amount that we received in 23 is $20,000 more than we did in 22. So final recap, the total preliminary levy is $5,346,485, which is an increase of 4.12 over 22. The preliminary tax rate is 39.45, which is a decrease of 9.29. The preliminary general fund budget is $6,295,651, and an increase of almost 10% over 22. The cost to provide city service based on our population estimate of 12,165 is $1.42, which is pretty darn good for the services that are provided. Again, finally, when we look at the return on taxpayers' investment, the average taxpayer is paying around $1.32 a day to maintain the safety of our city. Only 49 cents a day allows us the wonderful quality of life with the parks, and 40 cents a day to cover the cost of maintaining the infrastructure of the city by the wonderful Parks Department. Finally, for additional information relating to your property values, because remember, it's the County Assessor's Office who determines your property value, please contact the County Assessor's Office at 763-765-4900. If you have any questions regarding your overall tax statement, please contact Sherburne County Auditor Treasurer at 763-765-4351. And if you have any questions relating to your city taxes or the city budgets, please contact myself. My direct line is 763-251-2974. Again, this is our public input meeting, which is held tonight, Monday at 6 p.m. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to call me. Thank you.